Representative King whether or not he wanted to speak first or last, and he said he'd rather speak last so he could correct everybody else. For him, because he was elected again by about 60% of the vote this time in his last election. So I think being honest and frank about immigration is certainly something that can be rewarding electorally as well. When he was he's among the most knowledgeable members of Congress on the immigration issue, and that's why he's the ranking member of the House Subcommittee on Immigration. He was elected to Congress in 2002. When he was asked if the U.S. economy simply couldn't function without the presence of illegal aliens, Representative King said he rejected that position categorically. Just one other personal note, I attended the December press conference of announcing H.R. 4321. That's the Comprehensive Immigration Reform for American Security and Prosperity Act of 2009. That's CIR ASAP is the thing, so that's sort of the clever way that Congressman Gutierrez organized this event and staged it, and it was endorsed by close to 90 Democrat congressmen. This is an amnesty bill, essentially. And as part of the stagecraft, approximately 20 children, ages about 8 to 12, marched in with white T-shirts, emblazoned in red letters with the words, "Future Voter." The message couldn't have been clearer or more blatant. It's intimidation. Representative King.
Thank you very much. You know, I don't think I'm actually going to attempt to correct anybody in this panel. This is quite a panel, and I don't know why anybody went to listen to Newt this afternoon. I'm already filled up with what I needed to hear, and well, if they missed any of the previous presenters, they missed something, because you have heard, I think, a logical, concise, factual research viewpoint here that puts these facts together in a fashion that I think it should help anybody in America think about immigration. And so I went down through and actually struck some things off the list I wanted to talk about because they've been so well addressed by the previous presenters. And I'd start with a few things that are principles to inject into this overall discussion. And one of them is that when I first came to Congress, I was elected in 2002, and one of the things I did my best to get on was the Immigration Subcommittee, which I now am ranking member. So because it was an important issue, and I ran on it from the beginning. And people would say to me, "Steve King, why are you in the middle of America, flyover country in Iowa, why do you care about immigration? You don't live in a neighborhood where that's an issue." Well, at the time, it really wasn't much of an issue. But I was raised in a law enforcement family, and I was raised to believe in this country and in the rule of law and our national sovereignty. And everybody in America should be concerned when you see the rule of law eroded day by day and ignored day by day as we saw people break our laws and come across the borders. And so I went to the Immigration Subcommittee, and I sat down, and we had hearing after hearing going on. And the witnesses would come forward. It'd look a lot like a panel here, only they'd be different kind of arguments that you would hear. And constantly, the witnesses would testify. They'd start out, "We are a nation of immigrants." Well, therefore, because we are a nation of immigrants, then we apparently can't have laws to control immigration. I mean, it's one of those logical disconnects I couldn't quite get to, but it's a mantra. You've all heard it. We're a nation of immigrants. You're a descendant of immigrants. Therefore, you surely can't stand up and advocate for enforcing border control because somehow that's denying your own very heritage. And so I was sitting there one day, and Sheila Jackson Lee had invited a witness in from Houston. Her name was Ms. Jimenez. And I just happened to remember. But she made her testimony, as many did. We are a nation of immigrants. And so when it was my turn to ask questions, I said, "Well, Ms. Jimenez, you are here as a witness, and an expert witness, is that correct?" She said, "Yes, I am." I said, "That's good. Now, you've testified that we're a nation of immigrants, and I just asked you to still stand by that statement." "Well, yes, I do." So good. Well, then, Ms. Jimenez, I will offer to you, please inform this Judiciary Committee of a nation that is not a nation of immigrants. And her eyes actually rolled back under her eyelids. I saw the whites of her eyes. And her eyes came back down again, and she said, "Well, that would be the Incas and the Aztecs. And I said, who, according to anthropologists, came across the Bering Straits about 12,000 years ago? Would you like to try again, Miss Amanez? And of course she didn't. And I think it makes my point. And you can go around the globe, and I have. And even Japan is a nation of immigrants, and that's probably the oldest non-immigrant population that one can point to. They're still a nation of immigrants. So are we. We're a nation of immigrants that have prospered off of the central pillar of American exceptionalism called the rule of law. And another thing that we've prospered from is we've skimmed the cream of the crop off of every donor civilization in the world. We've done so with illegal immigrants. If you wanted to come here across the pond, so to speak, like my grandmother did over 100 years ago, you had to do something. You had to save up some money. You had to find a way to get passage. You had to pass at least a cursory physical examination. And if you got to Ellis Island and you limped, or you were obviously pregnant, or you looked like you couldn't take care of yourself, they put you back on the boat and sent you back to Europe. I mean, I didn't know these things until, let's see, the date would be in April of, let me see, about a little more than 2 years ago. We had an immigration hearing at Ellis Island in the Great Hall. And we took the tour around there with the federal officer who was a great tour guide. And we saw the pictures, we heard the story, they showed the little hook that they used to pull up everybody's eyelids to look and see if the white spots were underneath there. I've forgotten the name of the eye disease, some of you will know it. But if they saw the little white spots under your eyelid, they didn't look just at the whites of your eyes, they looked for little white spots under the back side of your eyelid. If you had them, they just let your eyelid come back down and put you back on the boat. And of course, they transferred a lot of disease because they didn't wash that little hook that they used either. But some of these things were a little bit hardcore compared to the way we are today. And I sat down at that panel for that testimony and to listen to the witnesses that were there. And I had no idea this was coming, but the National Park Service people that came and presented me the ship's manifest of my grandmother. And I had known she came from Germany. I didn't know when. I didn't know the name of the ship. And I opened up that manifest and I saw Frieda Katrina Johanna Harm. And there it was her parents, her brothers and sisters that survived, and the name of the ship, and it said Schleswig-Holstein, Germany. Now, I represent a place in western Iowa. My father is the only generation in between my grandmother and me, and the sister cities of Schleswig and Holstein in Iowa I represent in the United States Congress. So I have, as many of us do, a real appreciation for skimming the cream off the crop and getting that vitality that comes from the donor nations. We should appreciate that. That's one of the things that's great about America. But we're into this immigration situation. It's entirely different than it was 100 years ago. My grandmother came into a society that was, as we say, in a #1 pork-producing district. So we have this expression, we say, root hog or die. Take care of yourself. We want that animal that'll take care of itself. We want that human being that'll take care of itself. That was our immigration policy when my grandmother came here 100 years ago. Now you've listened to these gentlemen tell you we are a welfare state, and we are. And newly arriving immigrants arrive into a welfare state. I'm being lobbied by the Canadian Parliament to shut down our southern borders because the flow of illegal immigration makes it through the United States into Canada, and they can't afford the cost of the welfare. And I asked them, what percentage of the illegals that get into Canada are able to get welfare? And they look at me and they say, 100%. They all come in and apply for welfare because they don't have a 5-year bar. They can get in there and get welfare right away. So I'd ask you another question that is an important one, and that is, we get into these discussions and continually people have opinions, but they don't seem to want to stand with the standard. Now, I'm looking up something here. I'm not really actually doing that Sheila Jackson Lee Blackberry, but I want to bring something up to you. And that is that we should always ask this question: how many are too many? And if Linda Chavez is debating down the floor as she was, I would just ask her, you're an expert on immigration. What's your plan for America? How many are too many?